Hello everybody. Welcome to Creating the Basic Adaptable Game Engine Library, Part 55. Asteroids, Smaller Rocks. One of the features in the original Asteroids game was that when you shot a large asteroid, it would split into two or more smaller asteroids, which moved a little bit faster, gave you more points, were a harder target to hit. And it was a kind of a difficulty ramp that increased as time went on. And so, in this video, we're going to implement that feature. So, let's jump right in. Let's head over to our development environment. All right. To make it a little bit easier, what I'd first like to do is set the size of the rocks. And so maybe we'll make the rocks initially 100 pixels by 100 pixels. Right, to start, the rocks, we set the texture, but we're also going to reset the size so we know precisely what it is. And this is going to give us a way to distinguish large rocks from small rocks. And so we'll start them all out at 100 by 100. And then, let's go down to the bit of code in Update, where if a rock overlaps a laser, right, so this is the part where the rock is removed and the explosion appears. We add an explosion to the group. Let's also say if the rock is large, right, if rock is large, right, size 100 by 100 pixels, we're going to split into two smaller rocks. Two smaller rocks. So, right here we'll say if rock.width is equal to 100, then we'll say maybe make two new rock sprites. So sprite rock1 is equal to a new sprite. And I need to set the texture. But I think the texture in the initialize method, and I think the texture was defined within this method, yes? Right, so the texture rockTex was actually defined in this. But I'd like to get access to it in the update method. So what I'm going to do is take rockTex and actually declare it outside this method. And I want to give it global scope. Right, just like we did for the laser texture, let's create a public texture rockTex. Right, and this way we'll be able to use that same texture without loading it again and again in the update method. All right, so first, let's see. We've created our new sprite, rock1. Actually, let's create two at the same time. So let's start off by copy pasting this line of code. And two rocks. We'll say rock1 set texture to be rockTex. And the same thing with rock2. So two rocks. For each of these rocks, we want to give them a physics object. Basically all the same kind of setup that we did before. Let's also set the size though to make sure they're a little bit smaller. rock1.setSize to 5050. rock2.setSize to 5050. Each one is going to get a new physics object. So set physics to a new physics. And we want it to go, I think, twice as fast as the rocks previously. I don't remember exactly what that is, so I think it's about, it was maybe a speed of 100-ish before. You know, I'll give it a high top speed. I'm not necessarily going to set the speed of these new rocks to 300. Right, but for these new rocks, let's make this rock1 and rock2. rock1.physics will set the speed to be 2 times the original rock's physics.getSpeed. Right, so these new smaller rocks, they're going to be half the size, 50 by 50, but also twice the speed. Right, same thing for rock 2. Right? Now that I'm seeing all this code, I should be writing this in a for loop, shouldn't I? Let's do that. For int I equals 0, I less than 2, I plus plus. And whenever you're duplicating code a lot that's assigned, you should be using a loop of some sort. Right, so I'll call this new rock, and we'll call it rock small instead. And this will clean up the code a little bit. We'll also do some code cleaning up in the next video as well. Right, so that's smaller rock. Right, we've set the speed. We also need to set the angle of the new rocks too. So maybe we'll say rock small dot physics dot set angle, and let's make this the angle of the original rock, but maybe we'll add or subtract some small amount from that, maybe some random small amount too. So this is actually set motion angle. So rock dot physics dot get motion angle plus some random amount. See if I can make this code a little bit more readable by putting it on the next line. Plus some random amount, so maybe I want this to be plus or minus 45 degrees. Right, so what I need is 90 times math.random minus 45. And so that will give some number in the range from negative to positive 45. Right, so they'll be going off at slightly different angles. And then we need to add that new small rock to our group. And so after that bit of code, let's say rock group dot add rock small. All right, and I think that's what we need. Let's go ahead and give this a run and see if this works. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work, and then we figure out what it is we need to fix. But it looks like everything's compiling. Let's go ahead and shoot this rock. And no new rocks appeared. I wonder why that could be. Let's think about this for a moment. All right, after pausing for a minute and doing some quick debugging, the problem is twofold here. There's two things that are actually missing from initializing the rock. The first one is we never set the position of the rock. The small rocks, their position should align with the big rock that is just destroyed. So I think in the case that we just ran, the small rock was initialized at the position 0, 0. At the same time, we also didn't add the wrap behavior to the small rocks. Right, so they started at 0, 0, and then they just continued flying right off the screen, never to return. So let's go ahead and add those two parts to this as well. And so maybe we'll say rock small dot set position. Let's see, this is going to be rock dot position dot x, rock dot position dot y. And let's also add rock small, add action, and we're going to add, what's the action we want? Action dot wrap to screen. And we need to say the screen is 800 by 600 pixels. All right, let's see if this works. And then if this works, we'll do a little bit of code cleanup, and we'll have accomplished another task. And I had added making rock just to test earlier and get rid of that line. All right, everything's compiling. Let's go ahead and shoot some rocks. Oh, I shot 2 rocks right into myself. But that's great. Now, every time we destroy a rock, right, it's splitting into 2 rocks. And right now, I can just kind of spam and spin and destroy all the rocks this way. We'll have to fix that as well. There we go. Now I've got large rocks that spawn and turn into smaller rocks. That's great. Now, before I actually finish this video, there are some changes that I do want to make to the code. For example, we've seen this line of code a number of times, right? We want to set the position of one object to align with another object. And well, that's kind of a pain to do again and again. So what I'd like to do is actually add a new method to the sprite class that'll cause this to become a little bit shorter. So let's go ahead and look in the sprite class. Right, we have set position. We even have set angle. Right, what I'd like to do is I'd like to say maybe a public void. Let's call this align to sprite. This will take in an argument sprite other. So here I'd like to say this dot set position to other dot position dot x, other dot position dot y. And while we're at it, as often when one object spawns another object, we want to align their angles as well. So let's also say this dot set angle to other dot angle. Right? And we'll call that aligning one sprite with another. And now let's go back to the asteroids code and well, let's clean that up a lot. Okay, so for instance, I can say rock small, align to sprite, rock. That reads a lot easier. Okay, in addition, there's a couple other places in code where we can fix this as well. Right, for instance, when we're creating the explosions. Right, let's go to this part with the explosion where we set the position to the rock. Let's change this line of code to explosion, align to sprite, rock. I'm feeling better about this already. See, we also need something like this at this point as well. So let's say explosion, align to sprite, rock again. Anytime we're copying the position and or angle of one sprite with another, and we need to do that for the laser as well. So let's say laser dot align to sprite spaceship. All right, very nice. And that's going to make our code a lot easier to read. Oh, we can even do it with the shields too. In fact, we can get rid of all of this code. Just say align to sprite spaceship. All right, and now the update method is significantly shorter, a lot more readable. All right, there are a few more bits of code that I do want to tighten up a bit, but we'll do that in a moment. And just checking to see if there's anything else which we can obviously clean up. I don't really see anything right now. So let's try running this code one more time just to double check we haven't broken anything in the meantime. And hopefully we'll still be able to shoot the large asteroids and they should become small asteroids. All right, let's go ahead and fire. Yep, this is working. And I'm clearly not good at my own game, but that's okay. All right, so this code base is looking a little bit better. The other thing I'd really like to do involves some of these actions. Right, so for instance, this idea of delay, fade, and remove. Right, I could see that as a sequence of actions which we'd want to use frequently. So what I'd like to do here is create a single action which combines all of these. So I'm going to go over to the action class, and let's create a new action, right? And this will be maybe convenient actions, and I'll put them down here. Let's call this compound actions. Right, we could do something like public static action. This is delay, fade, remove. And what we want to do here is return a new action, or or not a new action, but return action.sequence. Right, and this is going to be a sequence of 3 actions. First action.delay. And it occurs to me that we need parameters, so a double representing the delay period, and then a double representing the fade period. So delay for the delay amount of time, action.fade out. For the fade, let's call these variables time. So delay time and fade time. A little bit more readable. Okay, so delay, then fade, then action.remove self. And so just kind of a compound combined action, and because I do envision us being able to use this. And then I'll just replace this large block of code with action.delay, fade, remove. So delay for a second, fade for half a second, and then removes itself. All right, so that's a little bit cleaner. There's another compound action too, which I think we might want to be able to kind of automate for us with another compound action, right? The idea of animating, and then when the animation's finished, just removing it. So maybe we'll create a compound action to take the place of this block of code. Let's go to action again, right? And we'll call this one public static action, and we'll call this maybe animate then remove. And this will be returning, once again, an action sequence, which consists of action.isAnimationFinished, followed by action.removeSelf. Right, so finish your cycle of animation, then remove yourself from the game. And so now we can change this explosion add action to action.animate, then remove. And again, it reads a little bit easier. Let's delete some of that white space. There we go. All right. And we can do the same thing down here. Again, tightening up the code a bit. We're adding the action animate, then remove. All right, and the code's looking a lot cleaner now. We've got not only do we have the multiple rocks spawning, we also have improved the code base a little bit. We've added some nice new functionality. All right, that's probably a good breaking point for this video, and then we'll talk about finishing touches in the next one. Thanks for watching.